New technologies will always change war. World War I had tanks to break through the stagnant battlefield, and World War II had many innovations, with new warfare tactics. But arguably, the biggest turning tide of the new war was the plane. Now we all know planes, right? Big flying machines that allowed us to travel the skies. Well, they were great. But when they were first made by the Wright brothers in 1903, they were more like self-propelled gliders. But this proved that humans could sustain flight using technology. And as humans, we use those technologies for good and for worse. When planes were first used, they were for reconnaissance, giving advantages that no one could ever gain on foot. The first use of planes during the war was during the Italo-Turkish War, for, well, reconnaissance. Planes were light and flimsy compared to today's standards. Being made of only wood and canvas, weapons weren't implemented in the use of planes till 1913, with a whole new compartment for a machine gunner. But having more space on the plane made it heavier and less maneuverable, making shooting down enemy planes an accidental run-in rather than on purpose. But all of that changed in 1915 with front-mounted machine guns that made shooting planes and infantry directly easier. Throughout World War I, technology was changing at a rapid pace. For flight, planes only got better. Better engines allowed planes to be heavier, thus birthed the bomber plane. Planes made to hold bombs and drop them on the enemy, such as the Gotha G4 and the Aerocode DH-4. These planes were used to target military facilities, such as factories and railroad stations. Even civilians were bombed to cause damage and lower morale. Yet even with all these advancements during the Great War, trenches being complex and made for protecting against constant bombardment made it too hard for planes to be effective in direct contact with ground infantry. Bombs weren't the only thing planes were dropping. Planes also dropped propaganda to lower the morale of enemy soldiers. This propaganda usually consisted of reminders of their home and family. During these times, weapons were made to counteract planes, but due to the material planes were made of, simple high-caliber machine guns or even concentrated fire was enough to fend them off, not to mention dogfighting that would take place in the skies in order to defend the ground men. After the end of the Great War, planes received huge upgrades, which became known as the Golden Age of Aviation. The biggest being the transition from flimsy biplanes into metal framework monoplanes. With stronger engines and bodies, planes were starting to become bigger and faster. Some planes were small in order to move faster, hunt other planes down, or survey the enemy. In the death of trench warfare, a new modern type of warfare was born. Trench warfare was obsolete due to the rampant improvements to technologies and planes that only got better. With faster and stronger planes, the nations found new ways of taking territory, aviation being a new major threat that could change the tide significantly. Planes were now able to hold men and cargo, travel long distances, and unload bombs over the dozen. The skies had no barriers and made attacking enemy positions easier than ever before. Because of how groundbreaking, or should I say air-breaking, planes were, countermeasures had to be swiftly thought of to fend off these giant metal birds. Weapons designed to shoot down these planes had been easily designed, but machines would ultimately lay the foundation of how nations will attack and defend from air attacks. Radars, being developed during the years leading up to World War II, played key roles in defending from sudden attacks from the sky. Radars would send a signal that would bounce off of objects in the air, such as a plane, and back to the machine, telling us the location and even how many planes there were. Yet there are still ways around this. Flying lower towards the ground and moving more sporadically made being detected by a radar a hassle, yet being so close to the ground also made it easier to get shot down or spotted by the enemy. Defenses, like anti-aircraft guns, shot down planes using rounds that would explode at a certain distance of their target. This explosion would send clouds of shrapnel that would easily damage planes, but these guns were solely for defending from air attacks and had a lethal range of around 30,000 feet, meaning the best way to rule the skies was air superiority of your own. Planes weren't independent in most cases. Instead, they worked more as support by bombing, supplying, or even surveying the soldiers. It was a constant adaptation in tactics, and planes played a crucial role in a part of it. In order to gain early air superiority, the Luftwaffe attacked fast and independently. The Germans' Luftwaffe formed tactics to bomb swiftly and constantly. Stuka planes would fly in a circle and would dive almost vertically, coming back up one after another. Other tactics adopted by everyone consisted of having fighter planes escort bomber planes, using the fighters to swiftly take out enemy planes and ground defenses. Time never stops war, and the night only made things harder, but could be used to take advantage of the enemy. Night bombings, before sufficient radars were installed onto planes, had the advantage of counterattacks being harder to plan, but the disadvantage of not being able to see. The Luftwaffe used radio beams off ground stations to locate the target. After locating, lead bombers would drop incendiary bombs, making the target easier to see for bigger bomber planes. Planes would also allow countries to attack overseas without the use of ground or naval troops. On December 7, 1941, Japanese planes would attack Pearl Harbor, killing 2,403 and sinking or damaging 21 ships. An attack only 4,000 miles away from each other, from the other side of the world. A drastic and desperate battle tactic fought by Takejiro Onishi and Masafumi Arima that was used by the Japanese pilots was the suicide dive into the enemy. Also known as kamikaze, meaning divine wind, it was thought of that driving into the enemy ships would be the best way to destroy their vital spots. These kamikaze planes would often be fitted with high explosive shells to ensure a stronger blow. Kamikazes were highly ineffective for its costs of planes and young pilots, with only 19% of all kamikazes being successful. Planes also created a new source of jobs for the economy. Every powerful country was in competition to create stronger and faster planes. New buildings were created to manufacture, house, and refuel these planes, which will impact the world for years to come. One of the final major innovations near the end of World War II was Germany's first operational jet fighter. On July 25, 1944, Germany attacked British photo reconnaissance Mosquito planes in Munich, and it flew at the speed of 540 miles per hour, which was 120 miles per hour more than America's fastest plane, the Mustang, at the same altitude. The jet fighter was fast and powerful, but was too hard to maneuver. Its design allowed the jet to make tight turns without losing speed, but was made too late into the war to be extremely effective. As World War II came to a close, with the Allied powers winning, planes and jets only improved from there. Without the threat of war, bigger planes and eventually the newly born jets had made their way into our daily lives. Man was now able to travel wherever and whenever we wanted. For good or for worse, these advancements would only get better in years to come. With better tracking systems and jet designs, we cannot admit that these giant metal birds that allow us to rule more than the ground and the seas has turned the tides of history as we know it. Thank you for watching and enjoying this documentary.